I guess we put all the mishap of the time behind us and get on with the purpose of our meeting. I want to thank GRASAG for this kind invitation. And of course, I also recognize my family, my daughter, my brother, my friends, all who've come here today. Returning to campus is always a reason to be joyful for me. When Professor Saradakwa invited me, even on short notice, I knew I could not turn it down, especially when I have not traveled outside the country, as my current international obligations often oblige me to. I'm thankful to my successor, Professor Kupole, past Vice Chancellor of this university, the past Dean of Graduate Studies, Professor Ernest Akole, and all those who deserve the special acknowledgement for providing valuable information on major developments in graduate studies after I had left. And of course, to dear Catherine, where are you? Thank you very much for painstakingly providing all those much needed statistics, which I may skip for the simple reason that I'm assuming all the students have the statistics. These developments are very, very important, regardless. I mean, this information is very important, regardless the discipline you are in. But most important of all, I want to express my gratitude to everybody who is in this room, for the audience, for giving me this privilege. Let me congratulate our beloved UCC. We are 60 years old, and we are proud of every year, we are proud of every day, and for coming this far. We are the first at many fronts. I was, of course, very proud to get the higher education results. This is a confession here. I'm associated with it, but I don't do Africa, I do Asia. So I have nothing to do with it. UCC earned its position, and you should be very proud of it. As an institution of higher learning, the University of Cape Coast has come a long way from focusing on the production of trained teachers for the then emerging secondary schools, from the University of Science Education to the University of Cape Coast, a full-fledged tertiary institution with worldwide acclaim, as our vision states. Our students, our products make us proud wherever they find themselves. And the result is the effort or the fruit of combined determination of everyone, the lecturers, administrative staff at all levels, and of course our junior and senior staff, everybody, our friends, those who wish as well. But I want to salute especially the junior workers for continuously giving us such a beautiful campus. Here, I salute the lab assistants, the personnel in the hospitals, the cleaners, those at the parks and gardens, the laborers, the campus guards, the drivers, hospitality personnel, and many unseen faces without whom you all know the university will not be what it is. We have students at all levels of higher education today. We have faculty in all disciplines and administration that we are extremely proud of. Congratulations to everyone. Just as it was the University of Cape Coast that introduced a mature student option, so were we the ones to convert previous knowledge into measurable options for entry into postgraduate education. These are interventions worthy of sustaining. Many others have taken cue from us, and that is as it should be. We set the pace. We should not be afraid to continue that way. From full-time, part-time, sandwich, from postgraduate certificate in education through to PhD offerings in education, we have these and many more. We have every reason to be proud of ourselves. The distinctive character of University of Cape Coast is our penchant for innovation, of not being afraid to be different. We grow most of our programs from scratch and carefully develop them into sustainable and relevant ends. A case in point is a BA in secretaryship, which grew to become BCom and is now a school with many departments reaching out to award the highest academic degrees. When the University of Cape Coast conceived of a School of Medical Sciences, it first broke the Faculty of Science into strengthened departments and introduced many courses, including human biology, that will serve great purposes such as pre-med. But herein lies the delicate balance between keeping an eye on what works and not falling for the general trends on the one hand, and ensuring that we do not hair split in an era of interdisciplinary scholarship. We have come a long way in the development of graduate work, and I choose to focus on the board or school as it is now. I gave the previous information to let us know where we start from and to let us know that the future is limitless as far as this institution is concerned. Our topic, Future Shape of Sustainable Education, Graduate Education, is intriguing. At least I find it so. The major noun shape suggests to me something that is fixed, as in a mathematical construct. I humbly suggest that we cannot freeze the future from our current circumstances. At best, we'll have a dynamic institution, we'll have a dynamic future, and a lot depends on the preparation we put in now to ensure that we are ready to meet that future. Even predicting or any kind of prediction has become very difficult given the rapid changes of our times. I want us, therefore, to look at what is possible and what might be, given our vision as a university and our circumstances as a nation. Doing things the way they have been will not affect that future in a positive way. Some changes, some sacrifices ought to happen for that to occur. This definition of possibilities, or making better what is, fits very well into the abiding definition of literature. You know, I'm a student of literature. As a discipline that enjoins us to be forward-looking and forward-thinking, moving away from what is to what can be. I will first look at the development of graduate studies at UCC, offer a critique of major steps, move on to other areas including funding, relevance, and so on. I'll give about 4 or 6 different ways in which we can move towards a future that is sustainable. And my intention is that we begin a conversation on what we can all do to make a future of graduate education sustainable. In the history of this university, what is now named the School of Graduate Studies has gone through significant transformations in the past decades, starting as a committee on higher degrees with a mandate to advise Senate, what is now Academic Board, on graduate scholarship policy and the award of scholarships. It is today the Board of Graduate Studies, or it moved to the Board of Graduate Studies in 1992 and later gained an elevated status as School of Graduate Studies and Research in 2008 to meet the challenges of graduate studies and to project into the future. And this is why I'm happy to be speaking on this topic. Now called the School of Graduate Studies since August 2014, It is entrusted with a mission to create a facilitating environment for teaching, learning, and training of graduate students in the sciences and humanities. Of course, in the other disciplines too, I'd like to believe. And that these graduates will be equipped with initiative and leadership in key sectors of both national and international endeavors. Against this background, the School of Graduate Studies in the immediate past decade has introduced a number of innovations geared at improving graduate enrollment, research, quality thesis, and completion rate. I will proceed by commenting on a couple of these interventions, if not all of them. But before then, I want to acknowledge individuals such as Mr. Sam Brubatla, former chairman of council of this university, and Dr. Sam Jonah, chancellor of this university, for their contributions in funding and in facilitating the work of graduate studies. Obviously, the SAMs are doing something worthy of emulation by the rest of us. I'm happy to note that there is now a source for assessing theses produced by the UCC in electronic format. This is an older project, and I'm happy it's resulted here, which we started with the DAD, the Danida project. And it started as an inter-university effort for Ghana to digitalize our academic output at the universities, establishing awards for outstanding theses is in the right direction. And I heartily congratulate the UCC for coming this far. I can only imagine all the arguments that will go into setting up standards and selecting the winners from across different disciplines. But you've done it anyway, and congratulations. At the personal level, I'm happy to have approved the building of the graduate building complex when I was privileged to serve as Minister for Education. This was supposed to be funded from the GET Fund and ought to have been completed by now, but I'll comment more on the fund later. Graduate students ought to be interested. Having worked at the then old site in a hemmed-in environment as the Dean of Graduate Studies for 2 terms, I knew this building was something that UCC deserved and could easily be justified in the face of competing requests. The memo I sent to Cabinet spoke about the potential and the actual performance of UCC in graduate studies and why we deserve that building. And I was very happy that it was approved, even though, everybody wanted something else. I thought that UCC has the potential to lead to seriously advance graduate studies education in this country. And I think the potential still exists, and we need to tap it even further than it has been tapped till now. We also worked hard at the board to turn this board into a school of graduate studies and research with approval from academic board. I have no doubt that the conversation I had with a colleague at a meeting of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences on my thoughts about this school and research played into the project that we sent to the Carnegie Corporation and which is now flourishing as the African Humanities Project. And I'm happy that UCC is still a major partner and that our colleagues are applying and getting this grant. It came as some kind of disappointment to learn later that the word research in the title of a newly established directorate, which had come much later, was causing confusion in a research institution such as UCC, and that we had to move in line with what existed in other universities, and therefore the UCC have to revert to its old description and by implication, its focus as a board. I want to humbly suggest that we revisit this. What makes the current composition and functions of the board different from what the school would have done? I'm glad to have taken the same idea to the university of which I'm blessed to become chancellor. It is a new university, but it is seriously rubbing shoulders with older ones and getting loads of external funding by their restructured postgraduate training option. I've also had the opportunity to share the document with vice chancellors who serve on the Africa board or the Forum for African Women Educationalists, of which I have been president for 6 years. These vice chancellors are also, as a result, growing their graduate programs accordingly through the refocus of graduate studies by strengthening research and linking faculty to students. It is this separation that disturbs me a bit. And I repeat, we have the potential to lead. We should not be afraid to be different. The creation of the Association of West Africa Universities, which I was again blessed to found, was to bring all tertiary institutions with a strong focus on research in West Africa for collaboration in areas of sourcing funding, student supervision, and common research materials and interests together. It is obvious that our continent is fractured, and we need mechanisms, including scholarship, to interrogate our artificial borders and make serious progress. Part of the business of the school, that is the School for Graduate Studies and Research, was to link up with others in ways including funding applications. Every so often when you approach the big funders, they want to see your connections with other institutions. So these connections ought to be taken seriously. We can't expect the students to fund everything they do. It doesn't happen anywhere else. The issue of funding continues to remain important to me because I have seen students agonize over government funding that was inadequate and sometimes came even too late. Pushing for the National Research Fund at the ministry was one way I thought could solve the problem, but we all know what happened. I'm not here to advocate to what Academic Board has abrogated, but to explain the rationale and to pick out what is possible within the current structure. But for now, again, let me commend UCC for some important current steps it has taken and to give my critique on them. If we are going to grow, we have to look back. We have to look at the past, evaluate, review, and move forward. Our topic requires an examination of past and current phases of graduate training at UCC and suggests ways of maintaining the quality that we have and assessing it. You see, when you are the first in anything, we know the current findings show we are first in the world, first in West Africa. It puts a lot of pressure on us. We have to maintain it. We have to stay there. And we need to find out what brought us there, what could have brought us there earlier, what can maintain us there. So it is in this spirit that I'll give the critique, and I urge that we all look at it. Again, I said it's a conversation, so it's not a prescription. One of the things the university has done is to introduce academic writing courses for all research postgraduate students. And the aim is to add value to degrees of our postgraduate students and make their final research reports as strong as possible. My comments. This is an excellent intervention, which invites questions that can be discussed at many sites. In the case of academic writing, for example, one would ask, why do we need to introduce academic writing at the graduate level where academic writing should be assumed? What should happen? What then should happen to our teaching at the undergraduate level? Shouldn't most, if not all, our writing in an academic setting be academic in nature? It is clear that graduate students may be sourced from various institutions and may not have uniform emphasis. Again, we know, or we can ask, what occasioned this? Was it the reports from external examiners? How should this inform our recruitment process? How do our students get into our graduate programs? Should we insist on sample writing? And to what exam should we submit that sample writing? How about the proposals? How about the interviews? How about review of progress of students? How about the modes of examinations at the level of coursework? Should third and final year students at the undergraduate level who are potential graduate students be taught and examined differently from their colleagues at the lower levels? Where should the preparation begin? I think these are questions worthy. Even though we are talking about graduate studies, we can never pick any segment in isolation and think we'll make progress. It should be a back and forth process. It should be a vertical and horizontal process, because education should be holistic. Otherwise, it will be expediency and we will not get any benefits, or will not get as much benefits as we should. Again, the university has introduced article-based thesis. Traditionally, research masters and doctoral students graduate with theses based on monograph formats only. Now, an article-based format has been added as an alternative to monograph in the preparation of thesis. The aim is to encourage publication of research of high standards in a timely manner by students with supervisors, I'm told, to improve student completion rates and better UCC's institutional image. The article-based theses allow for timely release of current research for immediate dissemination. And my comment is this: this is a very important addition, and it works well in many places. The basis being that the results of the research and its application to trends in the economy, society, or to the funder are needed very quickly. It also ensures the reputation of the institution as relevant to topical issues, as problem solvers. I believe these guidelines are in place to demonstrate how the research findings relate to the issues on the ground. It should also aid in the timely completion of the work for practical application. The School of Graduate Studies will do well to have its own team of researchers that track the effects of this intervention to deepen relevance and sustainability. 3, there is a revised program structure for postgraduate programs. There is the introduction of appropriate credit weighting for thesis or dissertation work, and mandatory scoring of research seminars for postgraduate research students. The new structure requires of doctoral students to take at least 2 courses in 6 credits, which may include advanced research methods, both quantitative and qualitative, advanced statistics, academic writing, and so on. The seminars, together with the courses, help to prepare students for their research work. My comment is that the coursework, even in areas not directly related to one's area of focus, will widen the scope of the researcher. So I welcome the coursework. And thus, I know if there are PhD students here, they are not going to be very happy. And thus, they expand the interdisciplinary focus of graduate work and training. At this point, allow me to share my experience as a graduate student at York University in Canada, and say why I'm happy that the practice remains at York after all these decades. Apart from one's area of concentration, York University makes you choose an area you would otherwise never select. and be examined on it, both in written and in oral forms. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so they'll make you choose an area that otherwise you wouldn't even want to consider. And you'll be examined in written form and in oral form. Of course, nobody in the university liked this requirement. However, it was a prerequisite. But as I said, the vast majority, if not all of us, disliked it. Not only disliking it, also fearing it. Because if you don't pass your minor area, you don't move up. The relief that came from passing one's minor area was palpable. We even had parties to celebrate that. Because you see, your major area, you've selected it, so you feel comfortable. But the minor area, the university imposes it on you. And of course, they explained again and again, it was to make us broad-minded and a whole lot of things, but we just didn't agree. However, the rationale sinks in as one advances in one's career. UCC may wish, I'm not saying you should do the same thing, but all I'm saying is that it is worthy of consideration. Okay, thank you. Because the PhD student is supposed to be very broad-minded in the area. Okay, so you can't just carve a small item for yourself and say you are philosophizing. The degree is a doctor of philosophy. It's the philosophical part that will allow you to introduce new knowledge to the discipline. Because the existing literature, everybody can read it. But as I said, even looking back now, anyway, now I've come to appreciate it, but at the time I didn't at all. UCC has also introduced dual degrees in order to promote interdisciplinary approaches to research, to break compartmentalization, which I think is very, very important in my comments on it. Because rigid compartmentalization, early specialization, hair splitting of disciplines are shortcuts to unemployment in our economy, or in an economy such as ours. And it is also antithetical to sustainability. Indeed, I was preparing a paper, I'm still working on it, for delivery at a foreign university next month on the same issue, on compartmentalization and how it runs at variance with interdisciplinarity, which is being promoted. And you know, yes, it's done elsewhere. They have their own economy. They have their own, as Ghanaians will say, wahala. Let's solve our own problems with structures and with methods that will help us. So in terms of the joint degrees, I suggest that perhaps this type of collaboration might work better in project proposals for funding when the thesis is over and collaborators can bring their expertise to bear on a common end, not on a common degree, but that's just a suggestion. In all of these very fine introductions, what I'm missing is a sustained effort at grant proposals for graduate students, beyond what governments can give and what individuals can afford. What I have seen are admirable administrative interventions that will no doubt remove, if not reduce, the stresses involved in the work of a graduate student. Therefore, feedback from graduate students, tracking studies will be very useful for us. What did they learn? What are they using it for now? A question I used to ask my students was, assuming you were to sign up for this course again, what do you think should have changed? And when you meet them in the street, say, oh, I was a student of UCC and so on. And it's very nice, isn't it? And then you ask, okay, so was CS helpful? Was this helpful? Graduate studies and research must have, as that part of that research component, be able to give those kinds of evaluations and reviews, because they have everything to do with the future of graduate education. The other recommendation I want to make is to reconsider the format that we have proposed for thesis writing. What I'm discovering is like a one-size-for-all statement of the problem and so. So a student does chapters 1 and 2 and is now going into the field to get information. It means you've concluded already. Leave yourself open for surprises. That is very, very important. It has to be dynamic and allow different disciplines to come up with the formats that work. Fortunately, well, you all know I'm in the humanities. I'm still examining some theses from other countries, in the humanities and literature in particular, and there's no such format. In the humanities, we dilate on the thesis, okay? You dilate on the thesis. So there's nothing like in my thesis on oral literature, I have recommendations for whom? The reader must tease out the recommendations from my work. I cannot be the one imposing them. So this is just food for thought. What should the future of graduate studies look like? While I do not wish to give a prescription, I wish rather to invite a conversation to build a dynamic consensus on the way forward. I'll be making suggestions here, but they are open to interrogation. But we need to agree that however good things are, things can always get better. And that is why I'm happy to join you in discussing some of the ways. Education being also encompassing, we must never, that is education, we must never be handled as a matter of expediency. We must ensure in education that other interrelated sectors, such as health, security, agriculture, business, transport, social relations, in public and private sectors, find it useful to collaborate with researchers at UCC to fine-tune and disseminate research findings and to find solutions to existing problems. It is a question of how we position ourselves as a country, as an institution. And graduate students have a key role to play in this endeavor, not only linking theory to practice, but problem solving while gaining relevant experience for the future. I remember a long time ago, I had a conversation with Professor Abani, and we were talking about accidents. And I was saying, you know, some things, we may say that some things are universal. But are they universal? Or are we essentializing other people's problems as ours? Let's just take one example. When you are driving and you see the circle, what does it mean? It's a circle. It's a stop sign. But in this culture, if you want to stop somebody, what do? Do you draw a circle? Okay? So we can, and this is language, mind you. These are the problems we have. Are we solving them? We can pick many examples from many disciplines so that through language, we can affect the right changes. And I remember they did research, I think among some drivers, and they asked, you know, when you see a deer, when you see the drawing of a deer by the roadside, what does it mean? And some said, it just means there's a chop bar close by. Which, you see, so you need to start with that person's understanding. Don't just think that by preaching and preaching and talking, he'll come to understand that there's a deer crossing. How many deers do we have here who are crossing roads? Or there's an animal crossing. Or you show the person a rectangle and you think he should understand it's a yield sign. For somebody, that comes almost naturally because it is taken from his culture. Your driver will have to think and rethink and try to remember what the driving book said about this triangle. By the time he finishes thinking, he's either in the gutter or has moved somebody there. So I'm just raising all of these to show that when we talk about education, it's not only the child in the classroom, although that is very, very important. There are other ways in which we can venture. For heightening and deepening the critical role of graduate education in advancing our economy, publicizing the results of graduate work is essential. I know we do it. I don't know what's happening now, but before congregation, we have the display of both students and graduate work. That should continue. I think that's very, very important. And the fact that you have linked student and graduate work at that space enjoins us to rethink removing faculty research from student research. It is that dichotomy that I want us to look at again. So it is essential that our alumni promote the image of the university and raise our centers of research as places where value can be added to existing practice. When we talk of adding value to raw materials, for example, we may as well remember that knowledge creation and dissemination remain key components of this important drive at production. And this is where faculty members, along with their graduate students, come in. I consider this very, very important. So you can see how I have emphasized it again and again. Because you see, if, for example, let's say I'm in literature, it doesn't mean I have expertise in everything in literature. But if my department has the character of specialization in this area of literature, then anybody in this country who wants to specialize in that area will come. And my research will not be very different from the research of the student I'm supervising. All of these have implications for why supervision takes so long. Because what I'm doing, let's say I'm in literature, I'm doing something in, I don't know, oral literature. And the student wants to do something in Japanese written literature. Imagine all the time I must set aside to do research to be properly placed in supervising the student. Assuming he has come into my area, see how joyful the relationship would be. He will learn from me, and I will also learn a lot from that student. So the faculty research must aid the student, and the faculty research must advance the institutional research and must feed into the national needs, so that we are not seen as people who are just getting degrees for the sake of them. We get them for reasons, and that should also aid in our employability. Yeah. So I want to give a couple of suggestions. One, funding. We all know the history of GET Fund and the scholarship and why students, I remember those days at the School of Graduate Studies and Research, the GRASAG will get involved, will compile the list and go back and forth. We all know what has happened to GET Fund. And if you don't know, you need to find out. And you'll find that the GET Fund has been securitized to collect loans. And that a huge percentage of the money coming into GET Fund today is used to pay loans. And you know, you are represented on the board. It is students who fought for that fund to be created. for VAT to be created. It led to many things, which is okay, it's all past. But it's serving a purpose. So I would have liked to hear from the rep of the student on that board how the changes today help graduate students. In what ways are you being helped? And if your interests are being served, I don't have any difficulty. Research costs money. It requires adequate funding and necessary equipment. The tertiary institutions must objectively review the research component of their funding. I remember the backlash I received from some of you. Maybe there was nobody in this room then. When I suggested that the research fund be converted, the research allowance be converted into a research fund. It was a mere proposal. And it was misinterpreted quickly to mean cancellation. Unfortunately, even the union leaders who engaged then had no patience for appreciating the rationale. Now that we are happy for a return to the status quo, I would like to take advantage of the muted, previously shrill voices and explain. In my academic life on this campus, I have seen many of our colleagues retire as lecturer, as senior lecturer, even as associate professor, when we all knew that they had every potential to have climbed much further, but for lack of opportunity, including funding. We all know that that research allowance doesn't take us anywhere. The research we had done then, the lobbying we had done from the ministry, the big funders we had approached, especially from the external sources, coincided with our initial idea that rather let us include the research allowance into the salary so it does not hang as a research allowance. We did not mean scrapping, which had become a buzzword then, and leave the research allowance as a whole. The rationale was that since the allowance was seen as item 1, to remove it from something that is paid in bulk at a certain time of the year and spread it over the 12 months so people don't lose anything. Then now that we didn't have any research allowance, we could create a research fund. That was the rationale. It wasn't to take anybody's money away from them. I'm coming from the campus myself. How could I even do that? I heard many reactions, including academics, even descending to the personal level, and arguing vociferously on radio stations about how Nana had received all the allowances she wants and now she wants to cancel it. I would never have imagined any academic making such an unacademic argument for something that was supposed to aid academics. What I wanted to see then, which I missed from academia, was concrete research findings to demonstrate why we would prefer an allowance that should not be added to item 1, because this item 1 didn't serve the purposes of research, and why the creation of a fund to give us adequate support was such a terrible idea. So we went to business as usual. You know, the status quo, doing business as usual, as we know, hardly yields different results. The reigning alternative then was for collaboration with non-local researchers who had funding. I don't know, some of us even bothered to find out how they got that funding in the first place to come and collaborate with us. Some of us did. And a lot of them had sourced their monies from their national research fund, which existed in their country. And the results were that in this collaboration, in most cases, the copyrights, the intellectual products were not even mutually owned. Sometimes our colleagues here even needed their permission to cite the results of the research to which they had contributed in the first place. You all know what I'm talking about. And if that does not mean reduction from full academics to glorified research assistants, what does it mean? We normally, in those research works, have made no input into the concept. We are only invited to review it and to tilt it to suit the context from which we'll collect the data. We may have been brought into the activity because the funder wishes to have a broader base. So in the end, when they pick Ghana, they pick Kenya, and they pick Botswana, it means Africa is represented. You know immediately this is not to solve your problems. And your problems will not be solved. And we'll still be putting our efforts and monies into education, and our problems may not go away. The most debilitating result I found is the way in which some of those collaborations divert attention from policy makers and from problems identified. They can also divert attention from the institution's own research agenda, if it has one. Let me also share my experience, visiting, I think it was graduation or so, one of the newly converted technical universities then. So we had gone for the ceremony, and I went to greet those days they were still rectors. And I saw so many things that have been produced by the students and beautifully displayed in a glass case. So I was telling him, oh, but my brother, you don't need any money. Look at all these things you have produced. We'll come and help you. Organize a big fair. Bring the industrialists. Bring people who can just pick and duplicate. Then the businessman doesn't have to go and do all of this. You've done it already. Then he said, no, we can't use them. I said, why can't you use them? He says, well, the funding, we did it with certain institutions, and they have the copyright, so we can't use them. Can you imagine? And it happens, it's very common. We need to find ways of stopping this. Universities are research centers, and they are established to find solutions through scholarship. We need proper funding to make this happen. And you'll also notice in their original proposals that there's a long list of graduate students as part of that research. So immediately you can see that the graduate students are being prepared for jobs. Because the funder, maybe it's I don't know, a drinks company or whatever, wants to improve on an item, on a product. So these young researchers are part of them. You're already opening the doors to them for employment. But if we are just there, I'm the faculty member, so I'm on it. And I'm on it without my graduate student, because what my graduate student is doing is very different from what I'm interested in. This link should be established and maintained to deepen relevance. Okay. Number 2, I recommend and encourage funding by the sectors of industry that will benefit directly from the research efforts. Such beneficiaries can be weaned off government scholarship so that the fund allocated will support those with interesting ideas, but not necessarily with any funder. And this model will be akin to the progressively free SHS model that we developed in the ministry to ensure that the vulnerable had all their needs met to access quality education. Giving everybody the same amount is to miss the fact, is to promote equity but not equality. And it is to miss the fact that not all fingers are equal. Some need more than what is on offer. And indeed, others may not even need it at all. So targeting, yes, doing the hard work. Now, I remember coming to campus and a colleague telling me, but you can never target. Now, I said, how do you do your research? You must target. Continue to review. Continue to fine-tune until you come up with a usable model. Even then, there's nothing cast in stone. You must always, because society itself is dynamic. Yes. And 3 student aid offices. I know you have a student financing office, and that is very important. What we thought we could do then was to supply our needs as a university. Okay. And I think that started when I was hall warden of Adeshiho. I remember very well looking at the budget we got, and I knew that it would not clean the hall for 1 month, but that was supposed to be for the year. So we started learning fundraising. So coming up as Vice Chancellor, again, looking at our budget, doing budget is always a lot of fun. You put in what you like, but when the reality hits you about the money that has been released, then you realize where you need to cut, and it's not a funny exercise at all. So we pose the question, you see, if the country is right, or the public is right or wrong, that the university has all these professors and PhDs and so on assembled in this small space, and that the students are also among the brightest in this small space, then we ought at least to start solving our problems. At least we need to do something that benefits ourselves instead of asking somebody else to solve. Of course, they should also play their roles. But what initiative are we offering? And this is what led to producing our own water, producing the cleaning materials. And I'm very happy that now we have the enterprise department also. There's so much we can do. And it is when you put yourself in a position of strength, you are able to bargain. So people don't just come and dump anything on you because they know we are poor. We can solve many of our problems. Establishing the SRC office, hostel, through, from Professor Adroben's time and so on, was very important. Because I was hoping that finally, UCC graduates will be the richest. Not in terms of flaunting it all over the place, but in terms of supporting their own colleagues who are not as privileged, because they are capable of turning their own lives around. It is that confidence that I thought will take them forward to solving problems. And more importantly, to help our business school people, because every so often we talk about our students who don't have places for internship, But where is internship better placed than as a model where the lecturer who taught you knows what you know, or where you are at, and what you can do in your internship. If I have my company and you send 4 students, 10 students to do internship, before you know somebody is 70, doesn't it happen? Yeah, it does. So you serve tea for 6 weeks and go back. What have you learned? I'm not saying it's the same everywhere for everybody, but they go with different levels. So we could have the hub, the laboratory, that even others in town can come and learn from. So I'm very happy to notice that. And we need to find many ways of raising the funds for the student aid office. Number 4 is sustainable graduate studies depend on relevance to immediate, mid, and long-term developmental plans. And I hope graduate students will take some time to read all the development documents coming out, 40-year development plan, Ghana Beyond It, whatever they are. Study them and see, where are we going? Because you see, you are here for 2-3 years. Where will the country be when you finish? You need to know, and it will influence what you are doing today. If, for example, a certain fruit factory, or let's say, whatever, a certain fruit factory that is seasonal, discovers that, okay, thank you very much. If that company discovers that there are researchers interested in reducing the time between the seasons by extending the fruit season, I'm sure they'll come and invest. And I have a personal experience. The company withheld because I didn't ask them. But, they used to chase the fruit. We know, let's say mango is seasonal. So when our season is ended, they'll go to Brazil, they'll go to Senegal and so on, bringing in the fruit so the company will survive. How do you go for a big loan from a bank and then you are operating only seasonally? It's not viable. You'll even lay people off, and that's not the best thing to do. So they contracted, I think, some people in CSIR, and they were able to give them species, that fruit, a little more often, okay? And smart of them, they placed the new species in between the 2 seasons. And now they're doing fantastically well. So if these things are happening, I'm sure that that factory will, in the end, operate at full capacity, do more food processing, including preserves, venture into organic fertilizers as byproducts. So when Ukraine is fighting, we don't worry about fertilizers. Cutting down on importation, cutting down on long distances, even their freight to bring in the fruit. And rather employing more farmers. And these are the initiatives we know our students are capable of giving. 5 I'll end soon. The 5th one is graduate students must be proactive. And this time I'm coming directly to your doors. Again, you can ask yourself, which businesses are not making profit in this country? What are the issues? A lot of the time, we change things on perception. Oh, the children are not doing well. Oh, they can't speak English. Who did that study? And if we are doing the study, we pick models from elsewhere. Then we enter into all kinds of assessment of children. But you see, their models are based on the experiences, on the language used in school, on the language used at home, and they've come to that level. So that if they say that in their country, class 2 children can read books, we shouldn't be impressed. Because if in that country, we oblige them to teach their children in Nzima before they can read, then you'll see how much better our children are doing. So these are all very important. We shouldn't be bothered about these kinds of, uncomplimentary comparisons, and then jump to do things that in the end even mess things up further. So if, for example, as I said, a company is not making profit, and you have done research, so it's not just hearsay, it's not perception, you have solid data to support it, then you will know maybe it's capital, maybe it's investment at the business place in the wrong place. Okay, maybe instead of let's say it's a hospital, you have your specialist. You want the specialist to go on training or conferences every year, but you forget the nurse who must be reading the screen as the doctor is performing the operation. So the nurse is where they were 20 years ago. You forget the technician who has no idea how these new machines work. So maybe it's a question of you need to invest properly. And a student where can do that? Or is it personnel issues? Is it somebody sitting there forgetting that he's working with ordinary human beings? Is it somebody who feels he's CEO and therefore he's, monarch of all he or she surveys? Is it that they don't spend enough time on task? And so on and so forth. And what can practice? There should be suggestions, because it is based on the relevance and the proactivity of what you have done. Maybe they may not even have seen it that way. Present it to the board and see what they have to say. How do we improve sanitation in our country? How do we practically go about it? Oh, people say I'll throw it in the gutter because I'm paying tax. Maybe that's one. Where are the others? How do we go about this with public education? Responsibility. Okay, how do we bring everybody around to the table, all of us? How do we improve sanitation on UCC campus? Maybe we can see there are small things we can all do so the situation doesn't get. I just use this as an example. I'm not saying UCC is not nice. And in all of this, carving an institutional character and sharpening our focus as an institution and as a country is a good way to attract funds for graduate training. When UCC, for example, and the beauty of UCC is that we can advance it from anywhere, whether it's business or language or medicine. No, we have it all. So I just want to use the example of education. If we decide that we will advance our vision of an institution with worldwide acclaim as the center of educational research in Africa, it will immensely attract regional, continental, and funding from the external sources. And this should keep our graduate students very busy and well-funded. The inclusion of graduate students in every research is critical because, you know, normally the younger people, they bring a lot of fresh ideas. They come with innovation. They don't have hang-ups over their promotion. They are not afraid of experimentation. When our reputation is firmly established in country, it will automatically be the research hub of education in Ghana. Where else would we go? And we will know that UCC will be linked to all the 22 agencies that form the Ministry of Education. And will also be linked to NGOs that have a focus on education, because we'll be continuously proposing solutions to existing and emerging issues. And these issues may relate to quality assurance, textbook development, learning materials of all kinds, distance learning, modes of operationalizing distance learning. I know we are pioneers. Again, we need to stay there. It can be a question of methodology, of leadership, of curriculum development, counseling, assessment, evaluation, management, adult education, non-formal education, education of girls, and education of boys too. You know, the list is endless. And let us remember that, as we said earlier, education cuts across all disciplines and all sectors. And I always remember a quote on the executive UNESCO board when a colleague said, "Whatever the problem, education is the solution." And I couldn't agree with him better. We also need, finally, to team up with local and international researchers. And every so often, it's almost like, no, we are bringing the money. Don't be cowed by it. What we are bringing to the table is even more valuable than money. So you send your foreign students to us, we send ours to you. And it's like, oh, you have to come and pay our fees. Says who? And I think we put that matter to rest. And I believe it is still at rest, fully. Okay, so right now, we have the inter-university library system. Now it's much, much easier even to get information. But when we are going to these collaborations, we must go from a position of strength. We must first know what our strengths are. Yes, you are coming with the money, but what your student will come and learn here in terms of our culture is more than the money. So we should go very strong. They are not doing us any favor. Yes, and to conclude, again, I'll tell an anecdote of when Liberia ended its war, and I was at the board, I was the Dean of Graduate Studies, and the conversation for some of us was, so what can we do to help? Of course, we don't have money. UCC, I mean, we have more needs than money. But we had expertise. So what happened? We did a joint project with them. I think it was USAID that funded it. They brought their teachers to us. We trained them. We got money. You see? So it's not always about cash. It is knowledge that turns into resources. We have plenty of it. And the future shape of graduate studies will be how we play to our strengths, how we are not afraid to be different, how we deepen our relevance, how we believe in ourselves that, yes, things can get better. And that is why our focus, starting with reviewing, telling the history, reviewing what is there, giving some critique back, and isolating these 6 points. So I want to thank you. Now let the conversation begin. I thank you for your kind attention.